Okay, so we are in the final lap of this seminar. We're going to start a little bit slow first, get the momentum picked up. So basically, right, AI in its lowest form is basically things like automation, intelligent systems, which is all about better improved processes. While generative AI is about improving processes better. Now, you all may look at me really strange now and say, what's the two difference? Rest assured, before I made this statement, I checked with ChatGPT. I GPT'd it, by the way. I'm going to, that term has not been used yet, right? GPT'd, like the verb Google. So I'm going to use this opportunity to say that it's in this forum and it's by me, GPT'd, okay? So better improved processes basically means enhancements, right? While improve processes better means making it more superior, coming out with new things. So to start with, I just wanted to ask all our esteemed panelists here, can you share some of the examples of how you have used or how your organizations, institutions, the industry has used generative AI or AI in general to improve your work processes or to come up with something so revolutionary? Let's start with our host, Beverly.
I think we need to invest in some new microphones if there's any IT people in the room. Thank you for that question. So how might we, in some areas here at Monash University in Malaysia, use generative AI in some way, shape or form to, I don't know about improve processes, but generally make life easier? And it will come as no surprise, being VP Education, that I'm going to give an education example. So we've done a lot of work with our educators on using Gen AI, using prompts. And one area that we are finding is quite successful is in building rubrics for assessment tasks. It can take days, weeks to build a really good rubric for an assessment task. I'm not saying generative AI gives you a perfect rubric against a set of criteria first up, but it's a good place to start, and it can save you. It's like that draft. It takes a long time to do a draft and then you have to refine it. So it can save you a lot of time. I don't see why anyone would start a rubric from scratch with the way that generative AI is able to give us a good starting point. We add some more prompts, we refine it, and we can end up with a really good product in a very, very short period of time. And at Monash University in Malaysia, we use rubrics for most of our assessments. So it's a really big task. That's a really big time saving if we start to add it all up over our, 600 odd units that we run.
We hear about things like personalized learning, adaptive learning. Is this something that you think universities in Malaysia, let's start with universities, are going to use this or are already using it at this point in time? I'm just going to throw the questions out there.
Thank you for that question. As usual, I might always give the negative side, only because I'm not very adept with technology, as you could see with my big laptop. No, the issue is with how academics at the university are valued in terms of quantity, the quantity of articles and books and students that they graduate. The penchant for teaching has gone down. The quality of pedagogy has gone down as well. So I don't see how any other form of technology could help in the learning process when the desire to devote time to teaching itself is not there. It's not encouraged. So the whole ethos of our higher education now has to be reevaluated. Why do we have a university in the first place? Is it to teach, or is it for the academic to do research? Or is it just to get a student through in 2 years as opposed to 4? Do you understand what I'm driving at? Do we understand why we have a university? So unless we understand that, the question about how we're using AI is moot.
Yeah, good question. And so let's look at it from a industrial, pragmatic perspective. So when we talk about development, we're not talking about training. Yeah? So it's about development. It's about a 6-month, 9-month developmental program for mid-senior career hires. The requirement for personalization is critical. Why? Because different individuals comes to the table with very different strengths and weaknesses, or gaps or areas for improvement. As an organization, I will be hard pressed to put everyone through the same program. It doesn't make any sense. But I will be able to go out there and say, these 3 people will go for this and these 2 people will go for this, because collectively, insofar as we have rubrics for the universities, we have competency models for organizations, whether they be leadership or whether they be technical. So let's put aside technical. Let's talk about leadership behaviors and what have you. And as we go up the proficiency rating or the proficiency scale, the needs for these different skill sets starts to change. So to your point, is it customized? Yes, I think it is. It ought to be. Do we use technology for that? More and more now as we drive towards succession planning, a 3-year time horizon, a 5-year time horizon. Absolutely so. And to your point, does it really make a difference? Yes, it does, because you are zooming into the things that matter rather than doing a broad brush. That's
all right. Yeah.
I just maybe like to take it back a bit. I've been doing research into AI and machine learning for 20 years. And when I first started doing it, if you turned on the television, no one ever said it. You can't turn on the television now without someone saying AI, ML, ChatGPT, large language models. The problem is we don't actually know, or there's no strict definition of what they actually are. I mean, I can tell you what I think of AI or what it means. It'll be different to almost everyone else in this room. You'll have a different view. Machine learning, I have a very, not strict, but I have a view on that. Large language models. Then you've got all the others that are out there, which, they start to combine large language or generative AI textual with generative AI visual. So at some point we have to take a step back and say, what do we actually mean by these things? Because we just use these terms without actually knowing what they are. Everyone uses AI. I mean, no one ever says artificial intelligence, it's just AI. But AI is a huge field. I mean, it covers, deep neural networks. It covers lots of stuff. But people wouldn't think about that. They talk about AI, ChatGPT, large language models, and machine learning all in the same breath, thinking they're the same things, and they're not. So I think one challenge we could put to universities is, universities have upped their data science, data analytics courses in the last, say, 10 years. There should be, I taught AI, but there should be, if you like, AI of today. We should be teaching that. And I think there's a big opportunity out there for people like data scientists. Yeah, they can go and sort of almost charge what they want. But if you can use all these models, if you can, everyone's put slides up and there's hundreds of them now. But if you can use them and select them and prompt them in the best way, then you'll be very powerful in the market. Whereas at the moment, everyone watches a YouTube and it says, oh, do this to ChatGPT, do this, ask that. So I think we sort of need to go back to what we actually mean by AI, ML, networks, artificial neural networks and everything, so that we actually understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think I would like to combine the ideas from the other panels in the sense that the question about personalization learning is actually one of the risks posed to the existence of university. When you have a personal tutor that relentlessly provide access to you to all the knowledge in the world through ChatGPT, you can learn anything you want. Do the students still need to go to university to learn? So I think that's the important issues that are disrupting the higher education or even any education at this moment at different levels, is that would ChatGPT replace all the human teachers? So in a sense, teachers still need to be there, but playing a different roles by facilitating the students' learning in a different, more on the, for now, it's still on the textual input. But in the future, it might not be. You can just talk to the ChatGPT. You can even interact with the ChatGPT. So the future potential is endless. And when it's combined with robotic, you have a personal companion.
Okay, so I'm going to come in right here. So
we spoke about, and I caught some of the things, right? Change is inevitable, right? And we're going to see the education landscape being disrupted. Yeah. So coming back to Dr. Sharifa's earlier statement, and I'm gonna, it's fun for the seminar to be a bit controversial once in a while. It helps to keep them in the memory. So, as what Dr. Goh was saying, right? Technology could free up the academics from doing what academics should do. But on the other hand, Sharifa, you actually mentioned at the end, that hey, at the end of the day, academics are supposed to be the main people, their main priority or their primary objective is to teach, right? That's why we came into the profession in the first place. So how do you see that little change, that little convergence of AI technologies, as well as because we had this conversation, that's now we had a very, very lively conversation during lunch, and we spoke about research, how research is coming to become, people are going more into research rather than teaching, rather than lecturing. And these tools are actually generative AI, allow people who are very research-centric to churn out more and more and more research articles and perhaps forego their primary purpose, which is teaching. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Sorry about my exclamation of saying, but really, because I cringe when I hear somebody or any comment about reducing social contact. We are social beings. A machine cannot, or any form of technology cannot replace that. Which brings me to the next point of trying to answer your query, which is we have got to have constantly in the forefront the idea of balance. We can't be obsessed with one thing over another and then 5 years down the road, oops, we made a mistake. I mean, I was just discussing with Beverly earlier about texting. How many of you actually are sick and tired of texting? Whereas 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it was the greatest thing on earth. Because thank God I don't have to see his or her face, I don't have to hear their voice. Human beings cannot do without balance. So I'm advocating, yes, the use of AI and in doing anything we want, but bring back the traditional role of the educator, which is to have human contact and to teach. Research is important, yes, but many universities have gone overboard with it. And this assumption that research equals publications, not necessarily. So I think, again, we need to relook at what the ethos is of higher education. I think it's become so complicated and for no reason. We've lost track of the original purpose, which is we are supposed to teach. We are not supposed to be obsessed and full of anxiety about whether my student can graduate on time. I mean, this GOT business is preposterous. Is that okay? Have I answered it or confused?
Any further thoughts? Yep, okay.
I want to take a step back. I think we always talk about technology. We are very skeptical about technology. So I just want to take a step back and say that technology has always been evolving. And if you go back, and most of the people who are in their 40s will understand that we have evolved over the period of time, especially with the advent of internet or with the advent of AI and so on. Technology should always be looked as an enabler rather than any disruptor. Technology is here to support whatever work you do. I give you a very simple example. All of us who are sitting in this room in some form of attached to the university or would have done, if there was no Zoom, no online, all of us will be out of job, right? Yes or no? That's a very common thing, because if there was no technology, you would not be able to communicate to the rest of the world when you were stranded in your house and do everything sitting at your desk. But technology was the only way which helped us to move on with your life in everything what we do. Now, some people can take it like, it can be disruptive, but no, it depends on the situation and the scenario and how you're going to use that. In many of my lectures, which I did not mention today, I always say that one thing which human has and technology doesn't have is the intelligence, is the common sense. What you're developing in AI is artificial. Anything artificial is not real. where the human intelligence is the real intelligence. Now, people, if they're taking technology and replacing anything which you do with the common sense, then you're making a loss out there. So treat technology as an enabler for everything you do. It saves time depending on scenario and situation. It can help improve your productivity, efficiency, and that's how it should be looked at. Keeping up too extreme and whether it's going to replace your job or whether it's going to make you 100% productive is not going to help. And that's how the student should be also learning in the classroom. Our role is to make them employable. Our role is to make them understanding the pros and cons of good thing. Again, we talked about the content is everywhere, so they can learn anything and everything on this earth without even paying a single dollar. If they have a 50 ringgit, 100 ringgit internet connection and a computer with them, they can learn anything. But it's also good to know about whether it's a good thing or bad thing, the pros and cons, the challenges, opportunities, or everything what they are learning, whichever discipline. So as a role of educator, it becomes important to guide your students and tell them how beneficial, where, and how you can use it. And that's why when Beverly spoke about, when we gave the 3 options, we have to explain why we are allowing you to do for this assessment and not for that assessment is the role of the educator, and the student should understand. So in summary, I think it's important for individual to understand why you are using the technology, how it's going to help, whether it's going to replace you or whether it's going to enhance your work. It all comes down to the individual. And I will always say that technology should be used as an enabler rather than a disruptor.
So there was this, I'm not sure whether how many of you are familiar with the article, right, that came out sometime last year. It spoke about 70% of the school leavers are now going for the gig economy. A lot of them are not interested in education. And I think specifically for Malaysia itself, I think the education landscape are facing some challenges, right? You've got that 70% who's not interested. And then you've got the possibility, like Prof. Nafis has mentioned, you don't have to actually go to a university anymore to learn. I mean, learning is at your fingertips. You can, so again, I'm going to say something very controversial. So yeah, you don't have to, right? And certain disciplines and certain occupations don't even need a form of qualified paper qualification. So where do you see education or the relevancy of academics over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think you make a good point, and I think I saw that report that, you know, people are going to go into the gig economy, and I see the role of universities twofold. Well, put research aside, but one is certainly on courses that are professional courses such as pharmacists, doctors, engineers, etc. You've got to get some recognised qualification because you've got to, you know, link it with the accredited body. But then I think you've also got to teach the students critical thinking and learning how to learn. And if you just leave school and go into the gig economy, that might do you for 10 years. But after 10 years, things will change. And you're probably then out of work. You haven't got the wherewithal or the skills to develop yourself. So I think universities have to teach you to learn how to learn and have to instill in you lifelong learning. And I can see, and I know universities try and do this, and we tried it both here and in the UK, where you pick up your alumni and say, you can come and do courses, you know, for lifelong learning. You can come and do, you know, professional courses or whatever. I think we should do more of that. You know, we need to keep people learning. And I think that would be a big role for universities.
I'd like to add on to that. First, ask a question, picking up from the earlier conversation. Is the role of a university actually to prepare students for a job? I would say no. Then the next question is, what about bringing up the status of vocational institutions versus universities? Because they serve 2 different functions. So I would say the teaching role for lifelong learning could gravitate and remain in the universities, whereas the vocational institutions prepare students for the job market. So, I mean, this is a different way of looking at the institution of education or the ethos of education. Right now, everything's muddled up. So, and again, I want to ask the question out there, what about humanities courses? Yes, you can't get a job if you do a PhD in a philosophical subject or in philosophy. But don't you think philosophy will help
a student when he or she is 60 years old and facing retirement and impending death, to put it very roughly. Don't these kinds of subjects help you live your life as opposed to merely help you earn a career or have a career? These things are important. So I need to get society to keep thinking this way rather than miss the humanities, for instance. So keep in mind, again, the dichotomy between vocational institutions and universities. Let's talk about these two as both being important and existing side by side.
Yeah, okay, good question. And allow me the opportunity to go back one bit. So if we talk about the gig economy, I then ask the question, and I think, well, the gig economy, because of how it has been stated and politicized, rightly or wrongly, it's, you're driving. It's about food panda. So that's how we perceive. And in my mind, that's wrong. Yeah. Because in my mind, if we have a 2-year contract, that's a gig. And I guess we are all on contract anyway, in some form or another. We are all giggers in some form or another. So the question then I think we need to ask, why is it that these students are not going down this particular path? I think there's something even more fundamental. And the more fundamental issue is now around the perspective of you earning $1 now rather than in 4 years from now. And rightly, wrongly, that's another discussion. Yeah? So I think the perspective or the issue that we need to be asking is, what role, not the universities per se, but what role do we as members of the public, what roles do we have as politicians, as leaders in the society? What role are we now having to ensure that we get them to make the right choice, taking into account all the different factors? Because if you're coming out as an 8 or a 17-year-old, and I'm not going to go, it's not even a 5-year time horizon, because I don't have the fundamentals to critically think. So what lifelong learning are we talking about? And I think this is a very fundamental question we have to address, even before coming into whether it's TVET or university or the likes.
Okay, pulling back to AI. Okay, I liked how Prof. Beverly said that everybody went into a panic mode when ChatGPT first came out. All the articles started coming out. What do you think are the challenges institutions and industry are currently or are going to face as AI or generative AI gets more and more technologically proficient? Maybe we start with the for Prof. Nafis from a financial sector.
I think it's important. Again, I will go back to the same notion, why we are implementing the technology and how it is helping. Human brain or human as himself or herself should be more used for productive purposes. Technology is to do mundane work which can help you manage things or which can automate. And I keep on going back to the same sentence that intelligence or common sense will never be part of the technology, because this is a human which is developing to help them do this thing. So there needs to be a distinction between the adoption. See, when AI came, everybody is talking about implementing AI blockchain into the operation. It's not cheap and it's not easy to understand the need and the purpose of adoption. It becomes like a herding behavior, which we call in finance. Everybody starts following the same thing. So when it comes to any technology development, every organization or every individual, every type of organization, whether it's university or any other sort, they will start following the thing to adopt or to implement. But we need to understand what benefit does it bring to that particular job or that particular organization. So talking from financial sectors, there are many things. For example, I give a simple example of smart contract. Smart contract using blockchain technology is to make sure that all the parties who are involved in adopting a product in different locations are able to see the document, adopt it, approve it, and it's done. You don't have to send multiple emails or multiple contractual agreement to implement that thing. That takes a lot of time and it will delay the process. It's a very simple way of putting everything on a blockchain technology. What is the responsibility of each institution or each party is involved in that, and that will trigger that whole process to take away. That's a very good innovation because you do not have to waste time in getting things approval. So it goes back to the need and the purpose of the organization, and every organization will differ in that. And high-paced industry where everybody has time is money, right? Whenever you want to do the timing, for example, if you are investing, this is a day off of work for all of us in that sense. Same goes to the technology. If you are investing into technology, is it going to give you an ROI or not? Irrespective of the sector, whichever we want to talk to. So technology is important depending on whether you're using properly and what is the purpose behind of the adoption. So I will make it generic rather than talking about any other institution.
In the context of tertiary education, since our today event is about tertiary education, right? We come back to what's the purpose of university? What is the purpose of people going to university? Is it getting the qualification that's needed? For example, to be a doctor, a dentist, an architect, you really need to go to university. But for other courses, if there's no one interested in it, the course itself will close down. That's the harsh truth, right? Every 5 years, you have to revise on your program. So the university program also evolving as the demand of the society. And now, everyone's advocating the employability, graduate employability. So all the university had to raise against all the graduates should ideally get a job at the end to raise up the graduate employability for the ranking of university, right? So every university need to go through that. And come back to the point of how, as the technology evolve, and how this will disrupt the whole higher education landscape, I think certain program will definitely lose some students because the certain job roles will be replaced by the automation. So there won't be demand on those graduates. And another point I want to raise is that nowadays, how can you live without your smartphone? If accidentally you left your smartphone at home and you drove to work, how anxious are you? And even the new generation, if you have kids, right, they all crying just to get the smartphone to watch the video, YouTube video and everything. Will you just give it to them or just try to coach them not to rely on the gadget? The general society is reliant on technology, on gadget. Imagine in the future, the smartphone, there's a Netflix movie I advise you to have a look. It's a hypothetical future, Jaxi, in which the phone know everything about you, even control your life. Yeah, your smartphone had all your detail, all your secret, all your contact, all the email, all the information. Imagine it's intelligent, that it can even interact with you, that it have all your secret in it. So how crazy is that? How addictive is that? That's something I want to, a scenario that I want to pose to everyone. Something of it as it wouldn't happen in the 10 years time, but who knows? Technology goes so fast. And the code is coding itself.
It's like what they say, right? There are 3 essential things that all humans need. Food, rather 4 now. Food, clothing, shelter, and a good data plan.
Can I ask, right? How old are you?
Everyone, my birth year is 1985.
Wow. Okay. When in 20 years, do you think you will be this enthusiastic about your phone knowing everything about yourself? Or about your kids or grandkids spending more time texting rather than talking to you? Okay, I don't expect you to answer. The point I want to make is, we are deliriously happy with the fast change that's taking place in technology. It goes back to my point earlier. We are unbalanced. What is wrong with being balanced? What the problem is there's profit to be made. Why can't we go back to a conversation about, we have public and private university systems, right? Why can't the public university system be free education for all? So again, we have a choice. When there's free education, then we can keep the philosophy departments open, keep the music courses open. This is the reality. There are humanities subjects that benefit humanity. And there are technology subjects which are needed for employability. So have 2 kinds of systems. The private, which is you pay through your nose, but you get an education and a guaranteed job, maybe. and then the public system, which is free. I mean, many socialist countries are surviving very well. So I'm just introducing this as part of this bigger conversation. We can't escape the cost of higher education, but we also need to address the problem of neglecting the humanities.
So just now, Mr. Taranjit, you mentioned something about the 21st century skills or the essential soft skills. And by the year 2030, it has evolved, right? I think if I were to look at the list, it's actually more problem solving, idea generation, originality per se. Are we prepared? Are universities prepared for this? I mean, in 2030, that's another 7 years. Yeah, it's going to be 6 years soon. Are we prepared to prepare graduates or for this sort of 2030 skills? That's number one. Number two, of course, is always this main question: the soft skills or the technical skills? Yeah.
So I need to address that. I think there are a couple of things that play out. So from an organizational perspective, as you walk into the organization as a new recruit, the expectation is for you to go out there to do work as an individual contributor. So let's be very clear. There are, for those of you who are familiar, there are complexity of roles, there are work measurements. As I come in as an individual contributor, I come in as an executive, senior officer, whatever you want to call it, and then I start working my way up. From that individual contributor, I now am a manager of people or a supervisor. I've moved up another level. Expectations and those roles now have changed. I move up another level, further up, I now become a manager of managers, all the way down to an enterprise-wide leader. Those skills are very different as I move progressively to the next level. So to your point, when it comes down to the area of the 21st century or your 2030 skills, those actually, if you think about it, those skills have already been there. It's not changed fundamentally. But what has changed is how are we applying it? And my premise here is it a need for the university to teach it? Or is it a need for the corporates to teach it? Where does one start and where does one finish? My view, and this is purely my view, you are taught how to think because the content changes every year. There is a yearly change in computer science or in law and whatever the deal is. There's a yearly change. There's a different perspective that comes out. But what you do take out of university, and this is again my personal view, is there's an ability to think in a particular fashion. Now you take that and you now go to industry and you say, now that you know how to think within reason, these are now the content that we have. Go ahead and do whatever you need to do. So is it technology, is it functional driven or is it behavioral driven? My going in is when I first start, it has to be functional because that's what your job is. Your job is a functional line person. But as I move along, that now becomes less and less important because it's a given and more behavioral related because that's the expectation.
So probably going to agree, but maybe responding to the question, there's always been a debate about whether a university student should be able to walk into a place of work and be productive from day one. And my view is no. Because, I mean, I'll take a view from my discipline, computer science. If I sent an email to my colleagues in a computer science department saying, what programming language should we teach next year? My week has gone. Because everyone's going to go Haskell, Java, Python, all sorts, Visual Basic. We teach students how to program. And then when they go in, and let's say we teach Java and they go in and the company's using Python, then they should know how to program. They've got to learn Python. What companies need to do, in my view, is if they really want them to be active from day one, is take them in on internships, maybe during the summer, and say, right, we're teaching you, learn Python. We'll show you our setup. You can program because you've learned Java and show how to use Python. So I'm not a fan of this. University should produce students which can just go in and do everything. There's got to be a two-way street, and I think that's why I'm agreeing with you. We're teaching students how to learn. And critical thinking and soft skills are a massive thing. I mean, the number of students that I've taught and interacted with over the years, and even at other universities, they've never given a presentation, or they've never had a discourse, they've never discussed anything. And, you put them into a place of work, they're just going to get eaten up and spat out alive. So soft skills and teaching them to learn how to learn. And then if industry want people ready on day one, then they have to get involved much earlier.
Can I just add on?
Yeah.
It doesn't start at a university level. Let's be very clear. These skills start off at a primary school level. So let's now extend this discussion. Let's do this. Let's extend this discussion, because in 3 years, I cannot teach you to think the way you need to think if I didn't start this at a basic level at infant school, as an example. I'm going to put that on the table.
It's a conversation, interesting conversation. I don't know whether this is a good seminar for this, but you're right. This is something that I think, especially for Malaysian education, we don't cover things like presentations. I mean, if you compare to the US syllabus, they have show and tell at primary school. We don't have show and tell. We just show up and we tell you what to do. That sort of thing. So that's something that fundamentally needs to change. But I think universities can't change the secondary system. So we are basically doing what we need to do to ensure that the students, when they go out, they should actually have that level of understanding. Yeah, over to you. Prof. Nafis.
There was a recent survey done by employers. What are the skills they are looking in graduates? And none of these technical skills came out prominently. The thing which came out was critical thinking and decision making. And this is not related to any discipline. It is not a technology specific or business or humanities specific. Because you can always apply critical thinking and decision making in any scenario. And that's why, for example, at Monash, most of the time we have foregone lectures. We don't give lectures one way of communication, but we give them real life scenarios and tell them to evaluate, analyze, and come up with decision making. Because employer also know that for the on-job training they can always provide, because everybody goes through that training, adapting to the situation of whatever the company role. When they give you a scenario, can you think about it? Can you evaluate the challenge? Can you come up with a decision? And that's the critical thinking and decision making skills we are looking at, whether you do it with technology or without technology. And this is not a subject-specific skills, but rather than intellectual or driven human development thinking. I think we have to clearly think that university is not here to make you wonders of everything. You are just here to guide them and develop these skills which are important. And as an educator, whichever subject you teach, or even as a professional staff of education institution, make sure that every scenario you are able to tell them why this thing is happening, or what can be pros and cons, and take the best decision. You should also not tell the decision, you should do this. These are the available options available to you. Take the best decision, and you should be mature enough to take the blame or take the credit out of it. Because whenever it comes to the credit, they will take it to themselves, but blame will be put to all the educators, system, university, and so on.
In terms of picking up from what you just said and yourself about going back to primary school, okay, we have to figure out the quality of the teachers we have, number one, because the teachers have in their mindset, it's a top-down approach. Teachers say and teach, students listen. There's no feedback the other way around. By the time these students graduate and go to university, graduates expect to just stay quiet in class while we teach. At graduate level, at the postgraduate level, master's level, they don't understand the Socratic method, which is what I used to do. Over the years, I find that students in the Malaysian context, they have no confidence. So they are very poor performers at the interview level. At the interview stage, when they're getting a job, wanting to get a job, they fail miserably. Now, many of you here might be employers, I don't know, but I'm quite sure over the last 20 years, in my experience, students lack confidence and they are very reluctant to participate in dialogue in class. They are afraid to answer a question, even though it's the wrong answer, but I keep saying there's no wrong answer. So this lack of confidence stems from primary school. And it's because of the nature of our system. And it goes back to the political system, I'm sorry to say, but it's this top-down system that has infected the entire society. We are a democracy, right? But, there's a big question mark there.
Okay, I'm gonna try to pull this back to generative AI again, and I'm just going to. These are all very interesting discussions. We probably have to meet up over teh tarik or something for this discussion. Dr. Beverly stated that in the next 10 years, right, over 1 billion jobs set to be transformed by AI. And Dr. Goh, you presented that the future is now. Where do you all think, the esteemed panel members think, the landscape? I'll start with the landscape of academia, because I think these are mostly academic people who are here. The landscape of higher education will change in the next 5 years with generative AI coming into the picture, with predictive AI coming into the picture, or with generally, we have narrow AI, we have general AI, now we have also super AI. I mean, super AI is still in theory, but within the next 5 years, we could see something of a nature coming in. Where do you think the landscape of education will be? How will education transform? Yeah.
This probably won't be popular, but I think if you look at other industries such as taxis, they got disrupted by Uber. You look at hotels, got disrupted by Airbnb. You look at bookstores, got disrupted by Amazon. Higher education has never really been disrupted. And I think I'm not sure the next 5 years, but I think in the next 10 years, higher education will be disrupted. I know Monash don't really do lectures anymore, but most universities still do Sage on the Stage 50-minute lectures, which goes back to the Middle Ages, whereas the attention span of most students is 2 minutes on YouTube. So, and I think the biggest disruptor will come in, someone will find a way to do micro-credentials where you can do a course here, a course there, a course there, so you can do a course at MIT, a course at Harvard, a course at Monash, and then someone gives you a degree. And you can do that all online, you don't need to come to the university. And of course, the students will pick the best courses. So, if you come to Monash, all the courses could be brilliant except one. Yeah, but just the way it is. But no one will pick that course. Yeah, they'll go and do it at MIT. And if someone can come up with a way of putting these micro-credentials together and you get a degree from whatever, the university of whatever, I think then the whole tertiary education landscape will change.
Earlier you shared, Prof. Graham, about predatory journals and paper mills, yeah, and how, for example, the review process has not been done. I've looked up, and probably there is a probability. I don't know whether it's practiced right now, for generative AI to do a fake review. Right? I mean, that could also change from an industry standpoint, from an academia standpoint as well, right?
Yeah. So our review process goes back 350 years, and it's never changed, really. And it's based on trust. And that trust has gone out the window. So we all think that we're getting fair reviews, but certainly with generative AI, there's a lot of discussion in the literature, I guess, about should generative AI be used to review a paper. Now, everyone says, no, I don't think it should. But if you get a paper to review, why not stick it through Gen AI and say, what do you think of this paper, then change it? I don't think that's right, but I'm sure that's happening now. So unfortunately, 350 years up until 10 years ago, really with the introduction of open access, it was based on trust and the system worked. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. With open access and now with Gen AI, I think the system's broke.
Okay, what I'm going to do is we're going to take the next 10 minutes. I'm sure there are a lot of questions from the member of the audience for this panel in regards to whatever we discussed in the last 45 minutes, or from the speakers sharing as well. So, yeah, I'm just going to open the floor. Yeah.
I'm Graham Wilkinson from Stanway University. I'm quite interested really in the whole issue of the future of universities, future of education. and the purpose of education. What we've seen is that, according to the World Economic Forum, many jobs are going to disappear in the next 10 years, maybe something like 20 to 40% of jobs. That means a lot less employment. So people will no longer be training for jobs. The jobs will not be there. So does that mean universities need to shift towards training for, education for leisure, so that we can enjoy our non-employment time better? Or do we not need education? I mean, when AI systems can basically, they have access to all the knowledge in the world stored in giant data servers, and they can solve almost any problem we can put to them. Do we need to learn lots of knowledge and content as part of education or not? Seems to me we're really at the cusp of a kind of important threshold in the world where we have to ask, what are we doing education for? Why do we need it? And maybe this comes back to the point I made earlier, I think, about the importance of humanities and just thinking about other things other than education focused on jobs, because jobs may not be there. And maybe we don't need the knowledge for jobs. We need to be learning or being educated for something quite different. It seems to me we are really at a very important point, and frankly, I'm at an age where I'm near the end of my career in academia, and I'm scared about the next 10 to 20 years. I'm glad I won't be around that long in academia to see what happens, because it is frankly quite a frightening prospect. Although I did notice that the chart on loss of jobs did not show loss of jobs in academia. Many other fields, but I don't think academia is mentioned as an area where jobs will be lost, which I found slightly surprising, because I thought there would be loss of jobs in academia. But I do believe we're on the threshold of a kind of significant change in requirements of education, and I guess that is quite an interesting place to be, and I guess we all need to think about that and think about what we're trying to do in education generally and in universities in particular. So I think that those are my thoughts on this.
Okay. Great question. And I don't see it as a zero-sum game. It's not one or the other. What I do see is a changing requirement, and it's a continuum. So when you talk about a loss of job, I don't see it, for me, it's not a loss of job, it's an evolution of that particular type of work. So the days of the data entry clerks have gone. We still have it, but it's now, the days of my journal vouching has gone. I grew up with Pricewaterhouse, we did a lot of journal vouching. It's all gone. But does that mean that it's a change is not there? Absolutely, there is a change taking place. The days of the true blue accountant that does data entry and that has gone. It's now something else. So I would like to look at it as a complexity change that is playing out. I would like to look at it from a perspective of it's not jobs being lost, but it's actually new jobs being created and the skills that are now required for these new jobs. Now, if we take it from that perspective, there's nothing to be scared about. And we talk about lifelong learning. That's what this is. It's about shifting our mode of thinking. And I find it absolutely amazing, and I'll share a real example. We are doing a fit for role discussion, as an example, with one of the FS, the financial institutions. And as a senior member of the team, the requirement of that role is to talk about the professional development of the rest of the team. And amongst the things that I then look at, I say, well, when was the last time you developed yourself? Well, 15 years back at the MBA from this particular school. And has there been no development thereafter? Absolutely not. And then I'm thinking, hang on, there's something wrong here. At least I'm thinking to myself. And my response was, you may want to ask, he may not have put it down onto the CV, he or she, but you may want to ask, what developments have you done to keep track with the changes that are taking place? If you're not interested in the development on your own, how can I be responsible on the development of others? As a very clear example. So my response to you, sir, nothing to worry about. It's all about having fun. Right?
Okay, I have a somewhat different approach, but it is, yes, ultimately about having fun. Let me pose another question through the back door. Let's ask ourselves this question. Around yourselves, look around the world. and figure out what are the major problems. Is it because there are not enough bridges, technology, not STEM-related developments, or are all the tragedies we are seeing around the world a result of human problems that are separate from technology? Okay? That's a very vital way of looking at your position in why you exist. Second part of your question, does the job define you? So I just retired at the beginning of this year. It's one of the happiest years in my entire life. I'm 60 years old. The job never defined me. So that's why, well, I'm saying that because maybe I'm still in shock. Who knows? But the point is, why does not having a job, apart from, of course, I presume you have savings, right? Whether you have savings or you're on a pension, the job shouldn't be the one defining who you are. It's your education that you've had that defines you. And this is what we as university or as educators need to teach the young people. What defines you? Is it the job that you're going to get or the career you're going to have or something else?
I think it's all about the agility of the institution. I did mention about the banks as an example, those who are agile enough to change or transform themselves as the technology changes or the world evolves. Educational institutions also need to be agile enough to do that. I think many universities which are still flourishing, I will say that they have adapted themselves with the change of the curriculum or the change of the specialization coming into the picture. If you keep on teaching the same thing over and over, which has been mundane or not applicable in the job place, I think it will not make sense. But teaching which is more relevant to the job or to the way world is evolving, I think now the university will collapse, or any other organization in that sense, not only the education institution.
So I think back to the landscape of the tertiary educations, as you can see, before ChatGPT, we have open learning. Don't you think that's also disruptive? So learning on demand. So I think that's the beginning. And everything is on demand now, like Netflix. So I think for the higher education institution, there's still a need. There's definitely, in the future, there will still be such institution for the need of training other skills, especially the soft skills, will get ever more importance. What ChatGPT can do is just provide information, but it cannot teach you in the sense of personal interrelations. Even though it can churn out all the love letter for you, but it cannot teach you the personal interactions. So all these soft skills are becoming ever more important. And at the postgraduate level, we are actually emphasizing on management skills. So project management, apart from the technical skill of working in the lab, but more importantly, to be independent thinker. I think in this era, I think this become even more essential to determine who you want to be in the future and not let the job define who you are.
In the interest of time, I think you have one last question.
Thank you for the interesting discussions. I believe one of the things that we are discussing today is really go back to the fundamentals. What is university for? I think the question, I think the answer probably focused on the university is actually a place for us to develop new knowledge and distribute knowledge. I think that is the key message that we have to go back to the fundamentals. A lot of people are talking about AI, all these things coming in, disruptions and whatever. So if we are the place for developing new knowledge and also distribute new knowledge, we cannot be replaced, number one. Number two, I'll also play around with the ChatGPT before. I asked, can professor being replaced by ChatGPT? So the ChatGPT answer is no lah. We cannot be replaced, so don't worry that you are not, because we are still need the interactions between the students. And now also having a long debate between preparing our students for employment. I think I quite like the answers that you have mentioned, that we shouldn't, because what we are teaching the students should be, we're preparing for them to make decisions. And at this era, students no longer deficit of knowledge. I think that's what you have highlighted in the ChatGPT. You can just get your knowledge through your phone. You no longer require to go to the library, search for thousands of journals to read, whatever. However, one thing that we need to teach students is analyzing the information that you get and validating correct. So go back to the questions. How do you validate? You cannot get AI to validate AI. So I think why the students still need to come to university, why the students probably need to really to conclude, to believe on certain things. I think the human interactions, the fundamentals has to be still strong, not just knowing the knowledge, but how do you know which one is the one correct? I think as academic, as educators, we play a very, very important role to ensuring that we deliver the good knowledge. And therefore, this is something that we will look into is how do we prevent we are overtaken by AI. Obviously, I think AI has been tackling a lot of humans in various aspects. So we have to still hold back the fundamentals, what is right, what is wrong for our future generation. And that probably is the greatest challenge for all of us. I don't have an answer. I don't expect an answer anyway. How do we ensure, because you have been talking AI, how do we ensure AI is actually not telling us the truth and we are trying to believe it in the future? I think that is really a very, very serious thing that we need to think of. It's not about employment, it's really our future generation education. Thank you.
So, is that a question or were you making a statement?
Probably I would say it's a statement because we wouldn't have answer. Okay. Probably everyone can share your views if you wish to.
Continue with my response earlier this morning. That I believe everyone heard about the point garbage in, garbage out. So the training model is as good as the data itself, right? So I believe that GPT doesn't use any data or anything from the internet. The training data itself is validated in the first place, even though it's hallucinating because it's a language model based on probability. But I think the material that is being trained on is actually valid. It's just that the current state of the model, that it come out with the result of the output might not be accurate. So how we prevent garbage output, that I don't have an answer because I'm not a developer. But you are right that we have to train our students to be critical. That's always the most important things, right? Be critical and seek for the truth and always skeptical of the answer, regardless from what sources, even like the fake news. So you can see now Google, even when you search for something, the search result, they also have algorithm to validate what come out to be the valid result. So I think a lot of technology is happening behind the scene that without us knowing how it works. But I think the future, to me, I think I have positive thinking about the future that is going to get better and better rather than going the other way around. Right.
Anyway, any closing thoughts from the panel members before I get hauled out?
I'll keep it very short. The only closing thought I've got is I'll come back to my presentation. I do think the peer review system is broken, and I think it's going to get more and more broken with paper mills, etc. And as a community, we need to do something about that. I don't know what. I'd like to, if you've got any ideas, let's go and have a drink and discuss it.
I think we don't have time for any more questions, so I think we'll end the session here. I think we are right on the dot. So thank you so much, members of the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Tan. Thank you, panel members. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here with us today for our seminar. And to wind things up, I'd like to call upon co-organizer, Professor Graham Kendall, to come up and say a big thank you to all of you and to our speakers, as well as to our co-organizer, Monash University.